What's up, everybody? So this is a Necron flyer that I've had for a while, and back in when I got it, I decided I wanted to try a quick down and dirty paint scheme that would look good but be really quick. So that's what we're seeing here. And the reason I'm showing this is kind of a before uh, of what it looks like now, because as you might be able to see, I tried stripping some paint off the paint off of this thing. I used to use a really good varnish, matte varnish. Um, it was for oil paints. It was a matte varnish that was meant to go over an oil paint canvas. You actually heat it up until it turns clear, and then you put it on. And it worked on the models. And it would look kind of shiny, and then once it fully dried and cured, it went matte. And it's like an impervious shield to stripping paint. So I barely scratched the surface on this thing, letting it soak in isopropyl alcohol for a while. Kind of wasted a good amount of isopropyl alcohol trying to get this thing to strip. At best, I got some wash off, and that's about ish. So I don't know what. I don't have that varnish anymore, but anyway, I just wanted to kind of show what it looks like now because I decided to try my hand at repainting over this, just getting it silvered again. Yes, redoing this silver too because might as well, as a bit of an experiment. I thought it'd be an interesting model to tool around with the airbrush to get it to a point where then I would not use an airbrush and start painting it by hand, kind of that style. And because it's a big model, also it'll be a nice tryout of the spray booth some more in terms of being something that's going to take up more real estate in the spray booth and how that goes. So just want to do a little before, quick ramble here to kind of set the stage of why it's like this. Honestly, the model doesn't look bad, but if I'm going to do anything Necron, I'm doing Mefrit style. So I'm not going to paint this guy up anywhere past just getting it fully silvered again. But until I finish up everything else, including the repairing of Apollo, which will take priority. But this little before, there's going to be a horrible jump cut, and then you'll see this guy all silver, hopefully if everything ends well, or you'll see a mess and I'll explain my failure. So that'll be fun. As well as some other models that I have done some airbrushing with as well to get to a base point with the orange again, kind of showing that, because I stripped down and redid that already. So I'll show them when I show the after of this, getting this thing to a nice silver sheen again. So yeah, thanks for taking the time out to watch this video. I'm going to get started in this guy, so then the very next image you see will be a horrible jump cut to this thing repainted to a point. What's up, everybody? So horrible jump cut over. Here's the end result thus far for this Necron flyer. Really the big test was getting it to this step and seeing how the model fared, because as you probably remember from moments ago, the Necron flyer had blue in the center and it had a different metallic look, I feel, for sure, on the winged parts or the crescent moon parts or whatever. And while it wasn't a bad color scheme, and honestly for how it looked, for how quick that went, it wasn't bad, but that's not what I would go for if I was going to truly collect Necrons. And being that I do have some Necron models, case in point this flyer, I would like to have him painted up in Mefrit Dynasty colors. So I thought when I eventually get to this guy, because he's low on the list of things to do, but when I do, I want him to be ready to just start getting the rest of the colors put onto the model. And I thought it would be a neat experiment for me just to see how well these Alclad 2 paints that I've had and have sprayed on garbage brew, how well they would coat over acrylic stuff already on a model that I couldn't strip and so forth. And then even though the detail is fairly deep on this model, I wanted to see how well this really thin Alclad 2 paints would cover and leave the detail preserved. And I'm pretty impressed with the end result, all things considered. I'm a very novice airbrusher, but I really like using the Alclad 2 paints. They're a lacquer-based paint. You're going to want to take precautions. I'm not trying to fearmonger, but of all the stuff that we could use in our hobby, it's on the toxic side compared to the rest, for sure. So wear gloves, wear a mask. I have an overbuilt, over-the-top, overkill style of painter's mask that I use, just because I want to take zero chances. It was in my portable spray booth, which handled this model of this size just fine with that on. And as long as you do all of that, you're fine. There's no extra crazy step that I've found to utilize Alclad paints. It's all a mental game, really. And I say that because when I was looking at these paints initially, I saw how well they covered on models. I wanted to experiment with that myself, but I thought because they're lacquer paints and because it takes that extra step of safety to use them, I thought for some mystical reason it was going to have some convoluted way to use it and it was going to be difficult to use. And honestly, it's the easiest to use. They're super thin, use them right out of the bottle. They clean up very nicely, they spray very nicely, they dry fast. Now the black gloss base is a gloss base, so it's going to look wet. So when in doubt, let it sit a little longer, basically. But I found isopropyl alcohol cleans up this paint very nicely. It really cleans out the airbrush really nicely. Use that and it'll be fine. But yeah, I sprayed the gloss black over this model, and that went really quick. Really good coverage over everything. Let it dry fully, and then I went in and I hit it with this silver, which is a bright silver. I don't know if you can read that. Bright silver candy base. They have a candy color system, which you put that down. The way they recommend is use their silver base, put it down, and they put one of their really translucent colors on to get it feel candied. You don't have to use it purely over that. A nice bright metallic of silver or gold variety can work. But I thought, might as well get that in case I want to experiment with their candy stuff. And it's a really nice silver when you look at it. So that coated super nicely, really quick, good coverage, dry really fast. And this is the end result that you see. Just really pleased with it. The light hits the silver very nicely. I almost would want to leave it just like this, but obviously I have to put more colors on the model and everything. But really pleased with the end result. Here on the tail end, you can see the black is really glossy. I left that around here. Don't know what I'm going to do with this little spine, but I'll figure it out. But really nice detail on the model that is preserved. That it's not particularly fine and delicate detail, but it's still nice to see it pretty much preserved perfectly, as if there was not layers of paint beneath these two colors. So that's important because obviously it depends on what you're painting, but not able, or you're not really able to strip every model you want to repaint for whatever reason. It's just not an option for everything. Maybe you got nice intricate green stuff, sculpting and detail on there that would soften up and get ruined, and when you strip it, or anything, or it's just a delicate model and you just want to paint it, you don't want to try stripping because it might break pieces, stuff like that. Now obviously if you're not doing metallic or anything like that, you want to probably not worry about these paints themselves, but in this case, it wasn't able to strip. I failed at stripping it completely, so I wanted to see how well it would cover, and I was pleased with the end result. So, yeah, not much else to say for this guy. He will be done in Mephrite Dynasty colors once I get to painting him, but to kind of lay out the laundry list, I got to do the repairs on Apollo before getting really involved with painting proper for sure. After I do that, I got to finish that Sekhmet Terminator that is basically 2 years overdue, and then from there, I want to work on these orange marines I'm going to show you in just a second, and then from that and so on, I'll eventually get to this guy while painting more Sekhmet, painting some Custodes and so forth. I will say, very nice paint, very fine metallic flake, looks very good. The Vallejo's liquid metal range, the alcohol-based paints, which also utilize isopropyl alcohol, are also very thin, very fine flake, very good coverage. Those paints I foresee when I try them on some Custodes for the gold are going to spray very nicely, I'm guessing. My point is, that's probably what I recommend for this ease of use in comparison to going with this lacquer stuff. But either way, for metallics, I don't think you can go wrong. So yeah, very nice flyer here for the Necrons, ready to get all fancy later on. So I thought I'd wrap things up by doing a little bit of a ramble on some orange marines. In particular, I wanted to just kind of pull up this backpack You could see some yellow on the backpack maybe in the center part and on the around the edges. That's not me highlighting it. That's the orange paint deciding I wanted to act like yellow paint for whatever reason. And I'm not sure why. So that's the only hiccup I had this go around doing this. I got another Primaris to paint alongside it. But, getting a feel, working it carefully, using the Surface Primer Gray from Vallejo and using Model Air Orange. I am pleased with the orange base color. I like this as the base armor color for my DIY Space Marine chapter. And from here it would be highlighting some shading and so forth and adding secondary and tertiary colors and all that and picking out the details and whatnot. But it's a good step to be at. Much easier than for me than when I was trying to do arms with a paintbrush a couple of years ago and just failing miserably. So this is what I like. This type of orange on the model here. This is the whole point of me actually getting the airbrush system, was to do stuff like this. And obviously like the Necron silver guy. It's the same concept. Getting the model to a point where I want to put paintbrush to model and do blockings and of colors and detail work and washes and so forth. So gotta say, experimenting with that Necron flyer, experimenting with these orange marines, I am pleased with the airbrush setup for what I'm trying to do. Still very novice at it, but making progress. So anyways, just want to kind of share that all with you. And yeah, until the next one, take it easy.